This is an unrehearsed interview with Lyle Griffith of McRae County, Kentucky on September 9th, 1994. The interviewer is Dennis Keith. Okay, Mr. Griffith, who was your parents?
Andy and Gladys Griffith of Tower Road in Stearns, Kentucky.
Okay. Who were your grandparents?
Alice and Benjamin Ball, originally from the Bethel area, and on Dad's side, the folks are from West Virginia, close to Huntington.
Okay. Where were you born?
Born in Somerset, Kentucky in 1952.
And you were raised?
Raised here in Stearns until I went to college at Cumberland in 1970, 70 through 74, and then moved to Ohio and started teaching school in 74.
What did you teach?
Taught chemistry and physics for 18 years at the same school.
And is there a particular reason why you decided to come back to Stearns?
A divorce brought me back home, and this is always home.
Okay. What got you interested in music?
Oh my. I've been interested in music ever since I was in the 4th grade. I started in the band and taking piano and organ lessons in the 4th grade. And in the 5th grade, I was in high school band. They moved me immediately to the high school band because at the time the band didn't have any flute players. And I happened to play flute, so they just needed someone. So here I was, a little old 5th grader playing in the high school band. And I've been interested in music ever since. It just, I don't know, second nature to me. And I played piano and organ off and on until I graduated college, and I was in the concert band in all 4 years of college, playing flute over at Cumberland. And music's always been a big part of my life.
What kind of music do you enjoy?
Almost anything except country. and rap. But I will listen to anything, and I particularly love bluegrass gospel.
What's your favorite song?
No particular, like almost all of them. Almost anything. Nowadays, lately, I've been listening to a lot of Doyle Lawson and Quicksilver. A fairly recent group that is out now. Quite popular.
Is that sort of a contemporary?
It's basically, it's all they have all kinds of different types of music, but I've listened mainly to their gospel and bluegrass gospel, and it's mainly the songs that I grew up in church with.
Okay. How many instruments have you played over the period of your life?
One time or another. Well, when I was in high school, I once upon a time wanted to be band director, until I got to Cumberland and found out all the 25,000 courses that you would have to take to do that. I kind of backed out on that. I didn't really want it that seriously. I had always wanted to teach science ever since 6th grade, so I stuck with that. And in the years just before college, I learned to at least learn the fingerings and to get at least a little bit of sound out of every instrument except trumpet and trombone. Never could do any good with those. And I still can't do anything with strings except for a dulcimer.
So you never had an interest in the guitar?
Nope, never did. Never took time to learn the chords. Never particularly wanted to. Just the only stringed instrument that I've ever really been around is a dulcimer.
Well, tell me a little bit about your dulcimer.
All right. First one I ever built, I saw at a place called Carriage Hill Farms, just north of Dayton, Ohio. And it was a kit, and an older gentleman was teaching a class on how to build the kit. And so I thought that would be fun to try. And so I bought the kit and took his class and built that cherry one that's up on the shelf there. That was my very first one. And it turned out fairly well, so I thought I might be able to do this on my own. At the time, my dad had quite a bit of pretty good walnut and cherry lumber, and so I got some of it, started on my own, and built one from scratch. That's the top left one up there is the first one that I built from scratch. Of course, it went to Mom. That was the very first one that I had built on my own. She had to have it. And then I got interested. I built it, and let's see, the kit was 81. The first one from scratch was 83, and then number 3 up there was, I guess, 1984. I've got them all written down somewhere. Number 4 down on the bottom was 1985, and then I went for several years and just didn't fool with it. Just didn't have time to fool with it, and so started up then once it came back here and built numbers 5 through 12. So I'm just now starting, just beginning. Number 5 was the first one that I had sold, so it went to a gentleman here in Stearns, and the rest of them have been sold to friends. It's hard to build one for someone I don't know.
So that's number 12 hanging.
This
right
is
there.
12, and 13 is behind you, and 14 is up here. So I'm still brand new at it. But I was, when Dad died in '88, he left me with a pretty good stack of dried black walnut, pretty good stack of cherry, and then I came across some nice clear spruce. So my first ones I built with birch on the top, and that was before I really knew anything in the world about what I was doing. And the birch wood is just too hard. It doesn't vibrate nearly as well as the spruce, and therefore it gives more of a harsh sound to the music, whereas the spruce, being a good instrument quality wood, gives a more mellow sound.
What's your favorite wood to use?
Oh, the walnut and spruce.
Walnut and
No
spruce.
question about that. Yeah, walnut and spruce. There's quite a history behind some of this. I always like to know where my wood is coming from, and I know people that I built the dulcimers for like to have an idea of where the wood came from. My number 4 dulcimer over there, I used to pick up walnuts under it when I was 5. And Dad cut it and took it to a sawmill and had it sawed into rough lumber, and that's what I'm using right now, the rough lumber from that. And the spruce came from Cass, West Virginia. There's a scenic railway over there that my brother always goes to. They have a big steam engine and tourist train. And so he had mentioned he's best friends with the engineers on that steam engine. And he had mentioned to one of the engineers that I was looking for clear spruce, and I looked all over southern Ohio to try to find nice clear spruce free of knotholes, and they just laughed at me. They said, "You're not going to find clear spruce." Even the fancy lumber yards up around Cincinnati that have carpet on the floor and you talk in whispers and all this big exotic, they just kind of laugh. You're not going to find clear spruce. So anyway, my brother had just casually mentioned to the engineer that I was looking for that. So Phil was firing the steam engine going up the 11-mile mountain to the top of the hill where they let out the passengers. Here the engineer stopped the train halfway up the hill, took off through the woods, jumped out, took off through the woods, didn't say a word, and just in a very short time, a minute or so, came back in, got in the engine, went on to the top of the mountain, let out the passengers. And here that afternoon. They came back down the side of the mountain, stopped at the same place, and there beside the railroad tracks laid a nice big pile of clear spruce. So that's where the spruce came from. there was a little fly by night sawmill beside the tracks up there. I always like to write a little bit of history to go along with my instruments.
That's very interesting that you like to know where the wood comes
Well,
from. And
since it takes anywhere from 1 to 2 months to finish one of these, there's a lot of me that goes into them, and I just like to know where the materials come from that I'm working with. I'm wanting to try my own, well, you can see 13 and 14. I'm going to try those out of cherry, I believe, solid cherry. But it's from here in the county too. Same cherry that Dad left me years ago.
how long have you been playing the dulcimer now?
Since '81 when I built the first one. And just kind of, I had a little bit of an ear for music anyway to begin with, and I just kind of picked it up. I used to have all kinds of books, you know, with the music, and but I just play by ear now. Just play by ear. People come in the booth here, and I'll try to get them to try one, and they'll say, I can't play anything but a radio. I said, can't is a 4-letter word in this booth. It doesn't exist. So I at least get them to try to peck around a little bit on it. And most of them are surprised how easy it is, because if you can carry a tune or hum or whistle, you can play one of these.
Do you like to sing along when you play?
No, cannot sing. Absolutely can't sing. Ruined my voice smoking too much. Used to sing all the time in choir and chorale at college, but that's gone.
Do you have a favorite song that you play on the dulcimer?
Probably the Bells of Loch Lomond, a Scottish tune that brings out the drone strings on the dulcimer. You know, they're very similar to the drone pipes on a set of bagpipes. In fact, that's why the dulcimer has those drone strings, to give that haunting, droning sound of the bagpipes. And when settlers moved into this part of the country, they wanted something to approximate that bagpipe sound. That song shows that one. Shows the drone strings pretty well.
So do you know how are guitar strings different than dulcimer strings?
Totally. As far as the string themselves go, no. But the tuning is totally different. And that's what's neat about a dulcimer. You don't have to tune it to any particular note. Most people just tune one string on a dulcimer, the melody string, to fit their voice range, and then tune the other strings to that one. So they're tuned to each other, instead of like on a guitar, G, B, whatever. So you can tune them just about any way you want. And there are major tunings and minor tunings, and just there's about 7 different varieties, of Aeolian method, the Mixolydian method, and so on. I just tune them to what sounds good to me.
How would you care to play us a little bit of your favorite song there?
Okay. I'm out of tune, I know, because I took it down to mine 18 Saturday night on the night where I played music down there. I'm going to have to steal your chair.
Just tune it or whatever you want to do there.
Maybe 2 short songs, how's that?
What was the name of the second song?
That one was The Bells of Loch Lomond, one of the famous lakes in Scotland. I always have loved pipes. I've never had any desire to go anywhere outside the United States. I think there's enough here to see for the rest of my life. But I did, once upon a time, want to go to Scotland, and the reason was to find a little old hole-in-the-wall pipe maker and get myself a set of homemade bagpipes. Didn't work out, so I'm still looking for pipes.
I can hear the tinge
drone
in the string.
the drone in it.
That's very interesting.
You ever got coffee, James?
No, I'm at liberty.
Okay.
Well, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you begin at Dulcimer. What are the first stages?
Oh my. Okay.
You don't have to be particularly detailed.
Okay. Yeah. I sat down a couple of weeks ago just because I wanted to have a complete set of pictures from beginning to end of the major things, the major steps that I do. I want to put them on the wall, because people wonder, they'll see one hanging like this and it's funny, they'll ask me, where do you buy wood that thin? Well, I usually have, I don't have it right now, but I usually have sitting down here a chunk of about a 8-inch piece of walnut log, about a foot in diameter, and that, there's where it comes from. But I started to tell you about the steps. I wrote down 25 major steps that go into one. Like, for example, one of the steps was carve the scroll, and that's a week. But I'm a slow carver. But start out with rough lumber initially. Anywhere from what I have at home is about an inch thick and anywhere between 4 and 16 inches wide, and 8-foot long pieces of black walnut. And I pick out, the way that I pick out lumber for the Dulcimer is balance a board on my hand or hold it at a fourth of the way, quarter wavelength intervals. Technical, but balance it on my hand and tap it. And listen really carefully and tap it. If it rings, it's Dulcimer wood. If it doesn't, it's firewood. Might as well throw it in the fireplace to burn. But that's against my religion too, burning a piece of wood, unless I can get away from it. But if it rings, then I'll put it on my bandsaw and true up one side, one big flat side of the board, and then cut a piece about 3/16 of an inch thick, and of course it'll have all the rough saw marks, bandsaw marks, and then pick out the grain and pick out a pretty piece. Try to pick out a piece of wood that fits. No, what I try to do is make the Dulcimer, the shape of the Dulcimer, fit the piece of wood. You can't just slap it on there and have it look and act properly. I mean, the wood's got a personality. And if you kind of find out the personality, I try to find the best shape of the Dulcimer that will put the least amount of stress on the wood, so it'll hold up better. And then sand it down to the approximate thickness and cut the sides out to the right thickness and height and approximate length, and bring them in here and put them in an old piece of gutter, set it on the propane stove, fill it with water, and boil them for about 45 minutes. Boil the sides for about 45 minutes, and then bend them in my frames, depending on what shape you want. Let that dry for 3 or 4 days is plenty. Glue in some temporary supports. Those white supports up there will come out. And after I get the sides bent, I can take it off the frame by that time I will have already had the scroll and the tail piece carved and generally to size and shape, and then cut the sides to length, glue the sides onto the scroll and onto the tail piece. Then I'm ready to glue on a back. Then I put in what's called kerfing strips, which are just little, maybe 1/4-inch pieces, rectangular pieces of wood with grooves cut in them so you can bend. I put these around the top and the bottom to give a little more surface area to glue the top and the bottom onto. And then by that time I will have had my fretboard cut out and sanded perfectly flat, or as nearly perfect as I can get it. And we'll be cutting the grooves to put in the fret wire. That takes a day right there. I try to measure my frets to the nearest 1/64 of an inch, and anything farther out than a 1/64, I can hear the difference in pitch. It won't be a true tone. So I'll try to get those as accurately as possible. And with these cataracts, it's almost impossible, just about impossible, but I eventually get it done. And then glue the fretboard onto the top, cut a big groove all the way, almost down the length of the fretboard. It vibrates better if the fretboard is actually almost hollow. It gives better transfer of energy from the strings to the inside body of the dulcimer. And glue on the top. Sounds simple. It takes quite a while.
It sounds as though
Quite a bit of patience.
your background in physics helps you.
Well,
to
I would always
better
I would always take my dulcimers into school, and I would have them in all different stages. Like this, just in pieces. And we would spend when I taught the audio spectrum, we would spend about a week just with the dulcimer in physics lectures, and kids loved it. And learned quite a bit of physics in it too. Of course, boomerangs, about 4 to 5 days on those, on aerodynamics and all that. I mean, what good is science if you can't have fun, right?
That's right. Well, tell us a little bit about your boomerangs and how you got started in that.
Oh, how did I get started? I can't really remember. I think I bought a plastic one in a novelty store somewhere, and I thought, hey, that'd be fun to make. And I just started making them, and would take them to school, and my kids, seniors, would absolutely love them. So I'd end up building a whole class set of boomerangs. And one particular day in the fall, we would all go out on the ball field and throw boomerangs and learn a lot of science and have a good time too. But there's all different shapes and sizes. The Australian gently curved boomerang is the one that most people think about. But those V-shaped V-rangs, I call them, fly very well. And the big pinwheels, like this one over here in the corner, nobody really thinks of that being as a boomerang, but they work. And I have made E's in the shape of an E. I've made R-rangs, which fly beautifully. But I just took an interest in it. I don't really know why. It was something that flies, and I love anything that flies.
So how hard would you have to
That
propel
one you gotta use both hands, both arms with. And it looks dangerous, but it's probably the slowest one and travels the least distance of any of them. It'll only go out about 40 feet.
That's about, what, 3 feet in diameter?
That's 3 feet in diameter. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about this interesting one down here.
Oh, T? A little neighbor friend of mine took an interest in my boomerangs, saw me out in the garden one day throwing them, and his last name starts with a T, and so I told him I'd make him a boomerang, so I made him a T-rang. These V-shaped ones, though, are kind of nasty. I have been going to some of the elementary schools, and they always ask me to bring my boomerangs and my dulcimers, and so I give them a little bit of history of the dulcimer and a little history of the boomerang, and let them play a little music on my dulcimers. I always take the ones that will stand up to quite a bit of use, and let them have at it on the dulcimer. Then I play a few tunes. Then we'll go out on the field and throw boomerangs. I don't really let them near the laminated ones in the middle or the V-rangs. I'll throw them to demonstrate, but they're kind of dangerous. Especially those that hit you in the head, that would do some damage.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I broke a $350 camera like that. Had it laying at my feet showing my seniors in physics, demonstrating how to throw them, and showing off is what I was doing. And threw it, and it went out about 50 yards, turned around, came right back, smacked right into my camera, and just mashed it.
Is there a particular kind of wood you like to build boomerangs out of?
Yes, for looks, those ones that are laminated right there, those are walnut and birch. Now, as far as looks, I like those. It takes a long time to make one of those, though. So when I can get hold of it, I like to use marine plywood, either maple or birch. I prefer birch. And it's hard to find what I use, because what I found up north was 15 plywood, only 5/8 of an inch thick, with 15 plies in it. And it's really expensive, but boy, it sure does make a fine boomerang. Strong.
So each piece is laid on top of the other, or it's like
in those laminated ones. Mm-hmm. I cut for those about 28-inch strips of wood, about an inch tall and 1/8 of an inch thick, and just boil them in water, bend them around my frame, let them dry for about a week or two, and then epoxy all of them together in that alternating pattern, and let it dry thoroughly, and then I have a boomerang about an inch thick, and turn it up on its edge on the bandsaw and saw down the middle to make two. But that definitely is not an Appalachian art, though.
No, but it's something you do. We're interviewing you.
Yeah, it's interesting. But I used to teach about a third of the principles that I would teach in physics each year were with toys, and if I could, I would make them out of wood myself. That was fun. And as far as teaching goes, my way of looking at that for the 18 years, that was my life. I lived and breathed and slept school. And my way of looking at it now is, if I can't do what I love, then I will love what I do. So I think that's just a chapter in my life that is closed now. But in a way, I still sneak in some science teaching with my toys and going around the schools.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you enjoy being around children and teaching.
Another motto of mine is, anything less than a junior in high school doesn't exist. But I enjoy going to the elementary schools.
What is that you have in the jar there? And what is that used for?
A little bit of lacquer thinner. On my dulcimers, I usually end up putting 4 coats of egg whites with a little bit of sanding in between. About 4 coats of egg whites on, as a grain filler, and then about 4 coats of tongue oil, 3 to 4 coats of tongue oil, with gentle sanding in between, but just some lacquer thinner to clean up my tools. I never had heard about the egg whites until probably, I guess, 10 or 11 years ago. There used to be a gentleman here in the county out on the Sand Hill Road that built dulcimers and no, he didn't build violins, he built fiddles. Beautiful instruments. And his name was Inman Gregory. I believe now he's moved to Crossville or Cookville, somewhere in Tennessee, or Jamestown or somewhere. But I went to visit him one time when I was here on a visit from Ohio, and he showed me the egg white trick. I never had heard of that before, but and I really like it. It's a good grain filler, and it's natural. It's not a store-bought petroleum product.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been here since in Store 1 here since Memorial Day, and Doc Winchester talked me into setting up a booth, and I really at the time didn't know whether I could do it or not, but or whether it would go. But I at present have orders for, all I can do now is take back orders, since it takes so long to get each one done. I have back orders for 8 right now. So I've been telling people, it's going to be a little while before I can deliver, but they seem to be willing to wait.
So from start to finish, about how long does it
Start to
take?
finish between 1 and 2 months.
Do you do different designs in the top there, or?
Well, usually no, because like I said, these are not traditional mountain dulcimers or traditional Appalachian dulcimers. They're somewhat close. Of course, the traditional mountain dulcimer would have just a plain heart, 2 hearts, but just plain hearts down at the bottom, like a Valentine's heart. And I've kind of started with the heart and then elongated it and made it into a trailing heart, and that has more or less become my signature. So if you see a dulcimer with a trailing heart, then chances are it's mine. That's kind of my trademark, I guess.
That's very interesting. Do you say if someone special ordered a dulcimer, would you?
I am presently making 3 shapes right now, and I take orders and find out what kind of wood they want, and of course I don't have a lot to choose from right now, just a black walnut, spruce, cherry. I do have a couple of dulcimers worth of exotic wood down there. Some Bacote from Mexico, some Meredillo from Brazil, but I almost refuse to use it because it's not nearly as pretty as good old Kentucky black walnut. It's out of place here in this country, out of place. So I'd much rather use native hardwoods.
It seemed to be more fitting with the Appalachian culture.
I do have some wormy chestnut that a friend of mine, I traded him some red oak for, and it's a nice big, used to be a barn beam, 15-foot long barn beam, 5x7, wormy chestnut, never been wet. I'm anxious to take it and have it plain so that I can, see if it's good quality wood to use in an instrument.